The great city of Lyrivan stood between the green hills and the quiet lake. The streets were full of songs and color, and people spoke often of the royal family. Yet in the tall white palace, behind doors of gold and painted glass, lived a princess whom the people almost never saw. Her name was Alara. Alara had once been the most joyful of the queen's daughters. When she was little, she would race through the palace gardens, run barefoot near the fountains, and laugh louder than anyone else. But one rainy evening when she was 16, the royal carriage slipped on the wet stones of the path. The horses panicked, and the carriage turned. Lara was rescued, but her legs were hurt badly. After many months, the healers told her she would never walk again. From that day, the cheerful noise around her began to fade. Her friends stopped visiting as often, unsure what to say. The nobles, who once promised to make alliances through marriage, began sending quiet excuses, and the whispers started spreading through the court. The princess is still lovely, they said, but how can a queen lead from a chair? Alara pretended not to hear. She smiled when people came and gave them polite words. Inside, though, she felt empty. She often sat by the tall windows of her room, watching the gardens below, listening to the wind brush through the trees. She had once dreamed of traveling beyond the palace walls, riding horses at sunrise and exploring the villages near the hills. Now those dreams felt like faraway stories told to someone else. Her mother, Queen Meridain, loved her deeply, but was always busy with matters of state. The queen hoped that keeping Alara safe and well-watched would protect her. So the princess's days followed the same pattern. Early each morning, the ladies-in-waiting came to comb her hair and help her dress. Then a tutor would arrive with papers, lessons, and polite conversation. In the afternoons, she painted. Her room was full of colors: soft blues, bright greens, and shades of rose. She painted things she remembered: clouds from the royal balcony, the river near the orchard, and sometimes the faces of people who no longer visited. At night, when the halls grew still, Alara moved her chair close to the balcony doors. She liked to keep them open and breathe the cool air. The scent of roses from the lower gardens drifted upward. She loved their smell more than she could say. Yet even that sweetness often made her lonely. Every corner of the palace reminded her of what she used to do and what she could no longer be part of. Everyone in the kingdom respected her, but from a distance. The guards bowed, the servants lowered their heads. None looked her straight in the eye. It was as if they all shared the same fear, that her sadness was a thing that could spread. Then came her birthday, her 21st. The queen decided to hold a grand feast, inviting noblemen from near and far. Alara watched as the palace sparkled with lanterns and laughter. Suitors dressed in their finest coats came forward with careful smiles, offering gifts, speaking lines they had practiced. She accepted them with grace but felt no warmth. The men saw a title, not a person. Before the night ended, she heard two lords whisper, thinking she was out of earshot. "They say she cannot dance anymore," one said. Pity, she was the jewel of Lyrivan. Alara waited until the guests left before she let herself cry. She thought about the way people looked at her and realized that, to them, she was a story that had already ended. But somewhere deep inside, a small spark still lived. She did not yet know what shape her life could take, or who might ever look at her without pity. The world beyond the palace seemed large and full of voices she had never heard. Sometimes she imagined stepping into that world, not as a princess, but simply as Alara, a person with paint on her fingers and dreams she refused to bury. The next morning, she decided to paint again. The sky was pale gold, the sun just waking over the horizon. From her window, she saw a guard walking along the courtyard path. A man she did not recognize walked with an easy stride, pausing to look at the roses as though they were treasures. Something about that small gesture caught her attention. Most guards hurried by, stiff and silent. She noticed his calm face and the way he smiled to himself when he saw a butterfly land on a rose petal. For the first time in months, Alara's brush moved without heavy thought. She painted the moment she had just seen: the bright flowers, the morning light, the man's quiet smile. Somewhere in her heart, she felt a faint stirring of hope. She did not know yet who the guard was or why he seemed different. But as she worked, the palace did not feel so silent anymore. It was as though the air itself had begun to change, carrying with it the first signs of something new, something that might finally bring warmth back to her quiet, waiting life. The next day dawned clear and bright. Elara sat by her window again, her eyes following the same guard she had painted the morning before. He walked along the path near the roses, checking the gates with calm movements. There was something peaceful about the way he carried himself. While other guards marched stiffly, he seemed to listen to the world around him. Elara did not know his name, but she began to notice small things about him. He stopped to help a gardener lift a heavy pot, smiled at the servants when they passed, and nodded politely to anyone who spoke to him. He looked kind, not proud or afraid to show warmth. It surprised Elara. People in the palace often avoided eye contact with her, afraid to say the wrong thing. This man, though he did not know she watched him, behaved as if kindness were his habit. Later that afternoon, a soft breeze rolled across the courtyard. Elara leaned forward on her balcony to reach a stray paper that had slid from her paint table. The wind caught it and carried it over the edge. She gasped, watching helplessly as the paper floated down straight into the path of the same guard she had been observing. He caught it easily before it touched the ground. Looking up, he saw Elara watching him from the balcony. For a moment, both stood still. Then he smiled, a natural, cheerful smile. He held up the paper and called softly, "Princess, I think this belongs to you." She blinked. Very few people outside her family ever spoke to her directly. The usual tone around her was careful, formal, but his voice was friendly, gentle, and without apology. "Yes," she said, her voice quieter than she intended. "It is mine. Could you bring it to the steps near the garden arch? I cannot come down, but my maid will collect it." He hesitated, glancing at the tall flight of steps that led up to her tower. "If it pleases you, princess, I could bring it myself. The steps do not trouble me." No one had offered such a thing before. She nodded, uncertain but secretly grateful. Moments later, the sound of his boots rose up the marble staircase. When he appeared at the doorway of her chamber, Elara felt oddly nervous. He bowed, holding the paper carefully between his hands. "Here it is," he said. "Safe from the wind." She smiled softly. "You are very quick, Captain." He laughed, a bright, honest sound that made the room seem warmer. "Captain? No, Princess. I am only a soldier. My name is Ethan Hale." "Ethan," she repeated, trying the name as if it were part of a song. "You must be new here." "I have not seen you before." "I arrived last week," he replied. "I served on the border before this. Her Majesty has asked me to help keep the palace safe." Elara looked down at the paper he had returned. It was a sketch of the rose garden. She felt shy suddenly, as though he had seen a piece of her heart. "You paint beautifully," he said, before she could speak. "The colors look alive. You make even the stone walls seem kind." Her cheeks warmed and she looked away. "You are polite to say so." "It is only the truth," Ethan said simply. "When I was a boy, my mother painted too. She said beauty was a way to fight sadness." Elara lifted her gaze slowly. "Your mother was wise." "She was," Ethan said. "And she would have liked you, I think." Something in his words reached a tender place in her. She could not remember the last time someone had spoken to her without pity. The guards usually stood silent. Nobles used too much praise but too little heart. This man's honesty had a warmth that made her chest ache in a sweet, unfamiliar way. They spoke for a few minutes longer. He told her small stories of life near the frontier, about the wide skies, the smell of wild rain across the fields, and the songs the soldiers sang by firelight. Elara listened closely, imagining every detail. His words painted pictures in her mind, bright and lively. Before leaving, Ethan said quietly, "If the wind tries to steal another one of your paintings, Princess, I will be ready to catch it again." She laughed softly, the sound surprising even herself. "Then I shall trust you with my art, Ethan Hale." When he was gone, she turned the recovered paper over and looked at what she had drawn. Somehow it seemed brighter now, almost as if her colors had changed after meeting him. The next day, Elara found herself waiting for the sound of boots in the courtyard. Each time Ethan passed below her window, she watched from behind her curtain, pretending to study her paints. He always seemed content, at peace with the world. There was still sadness in her heart, yes, but something else was growing beside it. She did not yet call it hope, but it was close. A quiet, fragile seed of it was beginning to bloom inside her. The days that followed grew softer for Princess Alara. She woke each morning with new energy, her heart lighter than before. Her hands moved more freely when she painted, her colors brighter. The gray shades she had once chosen so often were replaced with golds, greens, and clear blue. She did not question why, but some part of her already understood. The memory of Ethan Hale's kind smile lingered in her thoughts. Sometimes she saw him from her window, standing guard near the palace gate, or walking along the garden paths. When their eyes met by chance, he would nod or lift a hand in greeting. It was a small gesture, yet it made her day brighter. For the first time in many months, Alara found herself humming when she painted. One afternoon, she dropped her brush and laughed because her maid stared in surprise. "I did not think I would hear that sound again, Princess," the maid said softly. Alara smiled. "Nor did I." Ethan's duties often brought him near her tower. Whenever the Queen attended meetings or traveled, he was one of the guards assigned to watch the royal wing. In quiet moments between patrols, he and the princess spoke again. At first, their conversations were short, a greeting, a question about the weather, a polite word about safety in the city. But with each passing day, the distance between their words began to fade. Lara asked him about his life before he became a soldier. He told her about the small village where he grew up, near fields of wheat that swayed like the ocean in summer. He spoke of his younger sister, who used to chase the ducks along the riverbank, and of his mother, who taught him to read and play the lute. Alara listened with great interest. Every detail from his world outside the court felt like a window opening in her room. She asked him what the horizon looked like without palace walls, and he said it was the place where the sky kissed the land. She never forgot that phrase. It made her want to paint the farthest sky she could imagine. Ethan in turn asked her about her paintings and her favorite places in the palace. She admitted she loved the East Terrace best, because the sunrise touched every flower in the garden below. She told him that each morning looked different there, as if the sky itself tried to paint something new for her eyes. They began meeting near that same terrace when his duties allowed. He would stand near the door and talk while she painted in her chair. Sometimes he read to her from books taken from the library, stories of travelers, kings, and ordinary people who showed great courage. As he read, she often closed her eyes and imagined them together in those faraway lands. Weeks passed and the bond between them deepened quietly. There was nothing forced or hurried about it. It was a gentle connection built through shared honesty. Ethan never spoke to her as a figure to be protected or pitied. To him, she was a person with thoughts as strong as her paintings were bright. Alara, in turn, saw in him a man who had known hardship yet still chose kindness. Once, when a storm broke suddenly over the city, Ethan ran through the rain to close her balcony doors. He entered, soaked and laughing, water dripping from his hair. Alara could not help but laugh too. He bowed, looking half embarrassed, half proud. "Forgive me, Princess, the rain was faster than I was," he said. She offered a small towel from her table and said gently, "Then let it be a lesson some things cannot be guarded against." They both laughed again, and for a moment the sound of the thunder seemed far away. As the storm passed, Ethan stood at her window and looked out at the glimmering rooftops below. "The air after rain always smells like healing," he said. Alara nodded. "Yes, like the world is clean again." When he turned, there was a quiet understanding in his eyes. She felt her heart stir and quickly looked down at her lap. The silence between them was not awkward. It was peaceful, full of unspoken warmth. After that night, the servants began to whisper. They noticed how often Ethan was called to the royal wing, and how the princess smiled more freely now. The queen, busy with matters of the realm, rarely saw these small changes, but the court noticed everything. Rumors started moving like wind through the corridors. Some found the idea touching. Others said it was dangerous. Alara tried to ignore the talk, but one evening as she painted her garden scene, she spoke softly without looking at him. "Ethan, do you ever fear what others might say about us talking so often?" He shook his head slowly. "People always talk. Let them. Words cannot hurt if the heart is honest." She met his gaze, her voice trembling just a little. "And what is in your heart, Ethan?" He smiled, quiet but certain. Gratitude, princess. For the first time in a long while, I feel I am protecting something worth more than gold or land. You remind me of what good truly means. Ilara said nothing at first. Her throat felt too tight for words. But in that silence, her heart whispered what she could not voice yet, that this man had already done more than protect her. He had helped her begin to live again. The night outside deepened, and the two of them stayed there in the soft lamp glow, a soldier and a princess. Speaking of small things and feeling something far greater than either of them dared name. A few peaceful weeks passed, and the friendship between Princess Ilara and Ethan Hale grew stronger with every meeting. Each day brought a new moment of laughter or a quiet conversation. To anyone who looked closely, they seemed to share a secret world of their own, a world built on kindness, respect, and the gentle comfort of being understood. One morning, Ethan was walking his usual round near the royal garden when he saw Ilara sitting by her window, her face turned toward the sunlight. She waved to him and he smiled, lifting a hand in return. The smallest gestures between them held meaning now. He no longer saw just a princess. He saw a person who had faced pain with quiet courage. And she no longer saw only a guard. She saw the steady heart of someone who treated her as an equal. That same afternoon, the queen returned to the palace from a long journey. The halls came alive with servants preparing her reception. Music played, and banners of deep blue and silver hung from the walls. Ilara was wheeled into the hall to greet her mother as tradition required. The queen kissed her daughter on the forehead and asked kindly, "My dear, you look brighter these days. Something lifted your spirit?" Ilara lowered her eyes and smiled softly. "Perhaps I have simply learned to see beauty again, mother." The queen nodded without pressing further. But one of her advisors, Lord Rennick, spoke quietly in her ear later that evening. "Your Majesty, some of the attendants whisper that the princess spends much time with a soldier named Ethan Hale. He serves faithfully, yes, but appearances can be delicate." Queen Meridane frowned, but said nothing at first. She loved her daughter and wished only for her happiness. Yet she knew how easily the court could twist innocent things into scandal. Still, curiosity gnawed at her. Who was this man who had changed Ilara's mood so deeply? The next afternoon, the queen called for Ethan. He entered the throne room with respectful grace, bowing low. "Your Majesty," he said, "you sent for me?" The queen studied him for a moment. He was tall, plain in uniform, his hands rough from training. "I have heard good things of your service," she said. "You have done well at the border and here at the palace. Tell me, what do you think of your duties near my daughter's chamber?" Ethan's answer was steady. "It is an honor, my queen. The princess is wise, and it humbles me to ensure her safety." The queen's gaze sharpened slightly. "Are your duties only for safety, soldier, or do you serve her in other ways as well?" Ethan kept his calm. "Only as her guard, your Majesty. But if my presence has brought her comfort, I thank fate for that gift." His simple honesty did not sound rehearsed. That made the queen thoughtful, but also wary. She dismissed him with a nod, but later that evening, she visited Ilaire's room herself. The princess greeted her warmly, though her hand trembled on the arm of her chair. The queen walked slowly around the room, noticing the new painting scenes of bright skies, green fields, and faces full of light. "These are new," the queen said. "There is happiness in them." Ilara smiled. "I painted what I feel, mother." The queen studied her daughter's gentle expression. In that look, she saw something she had not seen in years' life returning to her eyes. And yet, fear lingered. A princess was not free to love as she pleased. Duty bound her heart to the welfare of the crown. A few days passed in uneasy silence. Then one morning, when Ilara was speaking with Ethan on the terrace, a messenger entered without warning. "The queen requests your presence at once, princess." Ethan bowed and stepped back to leave, but Ilara's voice stopped him. "Whatever she wishes to say, I will not hide." Together, they went to the great hall. The queen sat upon the high seat, her face unreadable. The courtiers filled the room with whispers. When Ilara and Ethan stood before her, the air felt heavy. "Ethan Hale," the queen said clearly, "it appears that your time near the royal wing has made my daughter happier. That is a kindness I will not forget, yet the throne cannot allow attachment that breaks tradition." You will return to the frontier at sunrise. The words struck like a blade. Alara's fingers tightened on her chair. Mother, please. The queen raised one hand. No harm will come to him, my daughter. But you must learn that love cannot stand above duty. Ethan bowed deeply, though his voice trembled slightly. I serve as commanded, your majesty. Alara turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. Shu said once that words cannot hurt if the heart is honest, she whispered. He met her gaze and answered softly, and my heart is still honest, princess. Then he bowed once more and walked out. The grand doors closed behind him, their echo carrying through every corner of the hall. That night, Alara sat alone on the terrace. Rain fell quietly, tapping on the stone floor. She thought of his stories about freedom and the open sky. Her heart ached, but inside that ache was strength, knew what she must do. The next morning, before the court assembled, she would go before her mother and the nobles. She would speak not as a princess forced into silence, but as a woman who had learned that kindness and love make a kingdom stronger than any gold crown ever could. As lightning flashed above the towers, Alara whispered to the empty night, Wait for me, Ethan. This is not the end. The night before the new dawn felt like a long breath that would not end. The palace was quiet, yet the air carried the weight of waiting. Princess Alara did not sleep. She sat by her window, the lamp flickering beside her. Holding one of the small sketches she had made of Ethan, his face, though simple on paper, seemed alive with calm strength. She traced the lines with her fingers and whispered, You showed me how to live again. When morning came, golden light filled her room. She called for her maid, Mira, who looked tired from worry. Mira, prepare the royal chair, Alara said softly. I must go to the throne hall before my mother begins her council. The maid's eyes widened. Princess, are you sure? The queen is still upset. Alara smiled gently. I have been silent too long. It is time I speak. Mira helped her dress in a gown of pale silver. Alara chose no jewels, only a single white flower behind her ear. When she was ready, she moved through the hallway slowly, each turn of her wheels pushing her closer to the hall where her future waited. The guards at the door were startled but did not stop her. The great throne hall glowed with morning light, its high windows catching fire from the rising sun.
Ow.
The queen sat upon the crest of marble steps, surrounded by lords, advisors, and servants. Voices hushed when they saw Alara enter. My daughter, Queen Meridane said in surprise. Why are you here? The council has not yet begun. Alara's voice was steady though her heart pounded. Mother, I come to speak before the court. Please hear me. The queen's eyes softened, and she nodded once. Then speak, my child. Alara looked around. Every face was fixed on her. Some noblemen wore frowns. Others looked away, uneasy. She took a deep breath and began. All my life I have been told what I cannot do. People have spoken of what I lost, as if my worth ended the day I was hurt. They have pitied me, protected me, and hidden me behind walls of gold. But a kingdom that builds its walls too high will forget the world outside them. The words flowed from her heart now, each one trembling but clear. There is one man who never looked at me with pity. He saw me as I am. His name is Ethan Hale. He brought light into the darkest part of my life. He reminded me that courage is not walking on 2 feet, but standing firm in spirit. Gasps spread through the hall, but Alara continued, her head held high. You told me once, Mother, that a queen must lead with strength. Then let my strength be love, not fear. If my voice still means anything to this crown, I ask for one thing: do not send him away. Keep him here, not as a guard only, but as proof that kindness belongs even in the high halls of power. A long silence followed. The queen's eyes glistened. Now she rose slowly from her throne and stepped down the marble stairs to stand before her daughter. For a moment she said nothing, simply looking at Alara's face, the same bright, determined face she had loved since childhood. My daughter, she said softly, you speak with the heart of a ruler. She turned toward her council. We have built castles of command, but seldom of compassion. Perhaps the princess shows us what the crown truly needs. Then she looked back at Alara. If this man has given you peace, he has also served this kingdom. I will not tear such strength apart. A low murmur ran through the crowd, but no one dared argue. The queen signaled to her guard, "Send word. Bring Ethan Hale back at once." It did not take long. By afternoon, Ethan returned to the palace gates, confused but hopeful. He was led into the hall where the queen and princess waited. When he saw Alara seated before the throne, a faint smile touched his lips. The queen stepped aside, allowing Alara to speak first. "You once said you would catch my fallen pages again if the wind took them," she said gently. "It seems I have found one more you must catch, my heart." Ethan bowed deeply, his eyes bright. "It has been safe with me since the first day, princess." The court stood silent, watching as the two faced each other. The queen raised her hand, and her voice filled the hall. "Let this moment mark a change in Lorivan. Let it remind us that true power lies not in flawless form, but in faithful hearts." That evening, the palace shone with new light. Bells rang across the city, not for war or duty, but for hope. Alara and Ethan walked together in the moon garden. He moved beside her wheel, his arm steady at her side. The night smelled of fresh roses and gentle rain. Alara looked up at the stars. "I used to wish for wings," she said. Ethan smiled. "You never needed them, Alara. You were meant to shine from where you are." She touched his hand. "Then from here I shall shine, and together we will make this kingdom a kinder place." And so they did. With time, stories of the brave princess and the humble soldiers spread far beyond Lirivan. People spoke not of pity, but of courage reborn through love. The court that once whispered learned instead to listen. Years later, when the queen grew older, Alara ruled beside Ethanot as a weak princess, but as a wise leader whose compassion guided the land. The gardens of Lirivan bloomed brighter than ever, filled with laughter, color, and the soft harmony of hearts that had once been broken but were healed by simple, honest affection.